A broken hearth. The pronouncement lingered, as cloying as pipe smoke in windless air. I'm leaving Alara. Her hands, coaxing dough into readiness for supper, froze mid-knead, a dusting of flour clinging to her apron like powdered sugar. She raised her gaze to Theron, his expression a rigid tableau of resolve. The lines bracketing his eyes appeared more deeply carved than usual. Leaving? What are you saying? He avoided her scrutiny, fixating instead on a gnarled swirl in the floorboards by the fireplace. I require an heir, Alara, a family to continue my line. You haven't been able to provide one, and the village wise woman believes the rest of the accusation remains suspended, a palpable weight between them. The wise woman, her voice, barely audible, trembled. You consulted her? Behind my back, Theron. A frigid premonition began to coil within her, a creeping paralysis that threatened to numb her completely. It had to be done. Years, Alara. Years we've yearned for this. And she's certain you're infertile, incapable of bearing children. The words crashed down upon her, a devastating wave threatening to drag her into the depths. Infertile. The term echoed, a brutal verdict that annihilated the delicate hopes she had fostered. Visions of small, grasping fingers of fireside lullabies, of a growing family nestled within their snug dwelling, all dissolved. Tears pricked her eyes, blurring the scene before her. That's untrue, she rasped, the declaration laced with denial and a desperate plea for him to contradict it. We simply require more time. At long last, Theron met her gaze, his face a complex blend of pity and something else, something disturbingly akin to revulsion. I don't have that luxury, Alara. I must secure my legacy. I've already made arrangements in that regard. Arrangements. The word pierced her, a shard of ice twisting in her core. He had already selected her replacement, already conceived of a future devoid of her presence. The realization struck with physical force, stealing her breath. She recoiled, retreating from the table, from him. The hearth's warmth, once a solace, now felt like a cruel jest, mocking the family she would never know. Go, she breathed, her voice fragile. Just go now. Theron hesitated, a fleeting shadow of what might have been remorse flitting across his features. He then turned and exited, leaving Alara alone in the suffocating stillness of their home. The tears erupted then, a deluge of anguish and despair that racked her frame. She crumpled to the floor, her hands pressed against her abdomen, as though trying to physically restrain the vanishing dreams. The hours drifted past, marked only by the dwindling embers in the fireplace and the relentless outpouring of her sorrow. Finally, as the initial streaks of dawn painted the horizon in hues of lavender and rose, Alara roused. The grief persisted, a leaden burden in her chest, but beneath it, a nascent feeling stirred. A flicker of defiance, of tenacity. She pushed herself upright, her legs unsteady yet resolute. She refused to remain here, within this house that had metamorphosed into a sepulchre of shattered aspirations. She would not allow Theron's callous judgment to define her existence. Fueled by this newfound grit, she commenced packing. Her movements were automatic, propelled by an urgent need to flee, to create as much distance as possible between herself and the torment. She folded her meager possessions, the plain garments and threadbare shawls that represented her life, with Theron. She carefully swathed the small wooden figurine her father had gifted her, a tangible link to a time before heartache. As she packed, recollections swamped her. The laughter they had shared, the tranquil evenings spent by the fire, the futures they had jointly imagined. Each memory was a fresh laceration, a poignant reminder of what she had forfeited. But with each tear that fell, a stronger resolve solidified within her. She would endure this. She would discover a path to rebuild her life, even if it meant walking it alone. The final item she packed was a small purse containing the few coins she had managed to accumulate, secretly set aside from her household allowance. It was a meager sum, but sufficient to initiate her journey. With her humble belongings gathered into a worn satchel, Ilara stood at the threshold, her hand resting upon the latch. She cast one last glance around the cottage, at the hearth where she had spent countless hours, at the table where they had shared so many meals, at the bed where they had. She banished the thought. She opened the door and stepped out into the invigorating morning air. The nascent sun cast elongated shadows across the meadow, illuminating the path that stretched before her. She drew a deep breath, filling her lungs with the fragrance of wildflowers and dew-laden earth. It was a fresh start, a voyage into the unknown. With a final look at the cottage, she closed the door behind her, the latch clicking shut with a finality that resonated in the silence. The sound echoed like the sealing of a tomb, a permanent closing of a chapter of her life. She turned and walked away, her head held high, her steps deliberate despite the ache in her soul. She had no knowledge of her destination, nor of what awaited her. But she knew one truth: she was not destroyed. She was bruised, yes, but not broken, and she would find a way to rise from the ashes. Whispers of the Woods. The cottage was smaller than she remembered from her childhood visits to her aunt, practically swallowed by the encroaching forest. Paint peeled from the weathered wood like sunburnt skin, and the roof sagged in places, whispering promises of leaks to come. It had been years since anyone had truly lived here, not just visited, and the neglect was a tangible thing, a heavy blanket draped over the small structure. But it was hers, at least for now. Ilara wrestled the overgrown gate open, its hinges screaming in protest, and dragged her meager belongings inside. A single trunk held her clothes, a few precious herbs, and the mementos of a life she was trying to leave behind. The small garden was a riot of weeds, choked with thistles and vines that had long ago forgotten what they were supposed to support. Undeterred, she set down her trunk and surveyed the scene. It was daunting, yes, but also liberating. Here, there were no expectations, no judging eyes, only the work that needed to be done. The first few days were consumed by cleaning. Cobwebs thick as shrouds clung to every corner, and dust lay in drifts on the furniture, relics of a forgotten era. She scrubbed and swept, her muscles aching, her hands raw, but with each layer of grime she removed, a sense of purpose bloomed within her. The cottage, she decided, would be her sanctuary, a place to heal and rebuild. She discovered a small, rusted hand pump in the yard. After much coaxing and priming, it sputtered to life, delivering a stream of icy water. The well was still good, a small miracle. Ilara hauled bucket after bucket, watering the parched earth, and finally collapsing in the shade of an ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like supplicating arms. Inside, she found an old cast-iron stove. It would need work, but she remembered her aunt showing her how to maintain one, how to coax warmth and life from its belly. The thought of a fire crackling in the hearth, chasing away the chill of the woods, filled her with a flicker of hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Ilara ventured to the edge of the whispering woods. The trees stood tall and silent, their leaves rustling in a language she couldn't quite understand, but felt deep within her bones. It was a sound both comforting and unsettling, a melody of secrets and ancient wisdom. She hesitated at the tree line, feeling a pull, an invitation she couldn't resist. The air was cooler here, scented with pine and damp earth. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled patterns, creating an ethereal glow. She took a tentative step, then another, drawn deeper into the embrace of the woods. The deeper she went, the more intense the feeling grew, a sense of being watched, not in a threatening way, but with a curious, almost gentle awareness. She could almost feel the trees breathing, the earth humming beneath her feet. It was unnerving, but also exhilarating. A sudden breeze rustled the leaves, and a whisper seemed to weave through the branches, a sound like her name, barely audible, yet undeniably present. Ilara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was she imagining it, or was the forest truly speaking to her? She reached out, and touched the rough bark of an ancient birch, its white surface scarred with the passage of time. A jolt, not unpleasant, ran through her, and an image flashed in her mind, a field of wildflowers bathed in sunlight and the sound of children's laughter. Confused, she pulled her hand back. The image vanished, leaving her breathless and disoriented. What was that? A memory? A premonition? Or simply the product of her weary mind? The light was fading fast, and a shiver ran down her spine. It is time to go back. As she turned to leave, she heard the whisper again, clearer this time, a single word carried on the breeze. Welcome. Alara hurried back to the cottage, the image of the wildflowers and the sound of laughter echoing in her mind. She stoked the embers of a small fire in the stove, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The cottage felt warmer now, more inviting. As she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone, that the whispering woods had welcomed her into its embrace, and that her life, though shattered, was far from over. A new chapter was beginning, a chapter written not by Theron's expectations, but by the whispers of the woods and the long-buried secrets of her own heart. The forest guardian. The further Alara ventured, the more intimately the woods enveloped her, the air heavy with the musk of loam and the ghost of unseen blooms. Sunlight, splintered by the dense canopy, scattered across the ground in dancing mosaics, playing visual tricks. A vanishing deer trail had been her guide, intended to lead her to a sun-drenched clearing ideal for sketching. But now it was gone, consumed by a sprawling chaos of ferns and decaying timber. A tight band of worry constricted her chest. She was hopelessly turned around. Panic threatened, an unwelcome and familiar presence. The trees, once comforting, now menaced, their branches gnarled claws reaching out. "Hello," she called, her voice a fragile thread against the whispering leaves. Only her echo returned, just as despair threatened to engulf her. A delicate thread of wood smoke teased the air, a silent invitation. Hope rekindled, and she plunged through the thicket, drawn by the aroma until a secluded glade opened before her. Here, nestled within the greenery, stood a cottage, not built but cultivated, its timbers living wood coaxed into the shape of a home. Emerald moss cloaked the walls, and a riot of wildflowers crowned the roof. It seemed to have sprung naturally from the earth itself. Hesitantly, Alara approached the door, a plain wooden panel etched with leafy tendrils. She knocked softly, the sound absorbed by the vigilant trees. A moment stretched, then the door groaned inward, revealing a woman whose eyes mirrored the forest's deep verdant hues. Willow stood framed in the doorway, her silver hair a shimmering cascade down her back. A simple linen dress, dyed in earthen shades, clothed her, and polished stones adorned her neck. Wisdom mapped her face in fine lines, yet her smile radiated warmth. "You seem troubled," Willow murmured, her voice a low, soothing current. "Come in, child. This is a sanctuary." After a beat of hesitation, Alara crossed the threshold. The cottage was small but radiated welcome, infused with the fragrance of dried herbs and blossoms. Shelves overflowed with jars and phials, holding a vibrant rainbow of tinctures and powders. A cheerful fire danced in the hearth, painting the room in a golden light. Willow indicated a low stool near the flames. "Seat. I'll brew tea," Alara obeyed, sinking onto the stool with a grateful sigh. The fire's warmth eased the creeping chill in her bones. She watched as Willow moved with quiet grace, expertly preparing the tea. "You're new to these woods, aren't you?" Willow remarked, a playful glint in her eyes. Alara nodded. "I'm staying in my aunt's cottage. It's been badly neglected for years." "Ah, me do suites place. Good foundation, that one. Just needing a touch of love." Willow poured the tea into rustic earthenware cups, the rising steam carrying the soothing scent of lavender and chamomile. "Here, drink this. Let's settle your spirit." Alara accepted the cup and sipped. The comforting warmth spread through her, and a wave of serenity washed over her. "Thank you," she whispered. I felt completely lost. Willow settled opposite her, her gaze gentle yet penetrating. Lost in the woods, or lost in life's thicket? Alara caught her breath. How could this woman see so clearly? She studied the swirling liquid in her cup. Both, perhaps. She confided in Willow, the words rushing out, detailing her broken aspirations and Theron's callous dismissal. Willow listened with infinite patience, her expression unchanging. When Alara had finished, she reached out and enveloped her hand in a surprisingly strong grip. You possess a kind heart, Alara Metasweet. Don't allow one man's blindness to extinguish your inner light. But the hurt is so deep, Alara confessed, tears welling. Pain is an inevitable part of the journey, Willow responded, her voice both firm and gentle. It refines us, shapes us, fortifies us. But you must not let it consume you. The world awaits your gifts. Alara looked up, her eyes searching Willow's. What do you mean? A knowing smile played on Willow's lips. The forest whispers to you, doesn't it? You have a rare gift, Alara, an innate connection to the natural world. You must cultivate it, embrace its power. Alara frowned, puzzled. I don't understand. You will, Willow assured her. In time, trust your instincts. Listen to the yearnings of your heart, and never underestimate the earth's potent magic. She paused, her gaze intense. And remember, you are far stronger than you believe. The words resonated within Alara, planting a seed of hope in the desolate terrain of her heart. She finished her tea, experiencing a tranquility she thought unattainable. As twilight deepened, Willow guided her back to the forest's edge, pointing her towards the Metasweet cottage. Return whenever you wish, Alara, Willow offered. My door is always open. Alara turned to express her gratitude, but Willow had already melted into the shadows, leaving her alone with the murmuring trees and the lingering trace of wood smoke. As she retraced her steps to the cottage, Alara sensed a burgeoning purpose within. The pain persisted, but its grip had loosened. She had gained a confidant, a guiding light, and a flicker of hope in the heart of the whispering woods. And maybe, just maybe, she had also begun to rediscover herself. A brew of hope. The first morning after meeting Willow, Alara woke with a sliver of sunlight painting the floor of her bedroom. The memory of the cottage, the scent of wood smoke and herbs, felt almost like a dream. But the packet of dried leaves and flowers Willow had given her sat on her bedside table, tied with a simple strand of twine. She padded down to the kitchen, the floorboards cool beneath her bare feet. The kettle, a chipped enamel one she'd inherited from her grandmother, sat waiting on the stove. As the water heated, she unwrapped the packet. The fragrance that unfurled was complex, a blend of earthy sweetness, a hint of pine, and something floral that tickled her nose. It was the scent of the forest itself, captured and tamed. Following Willow's instructions, she measured a spoonful of the mixture into a teapot and poured the steaming water over it. The liquid quickly turned a rich, amber color. While it steeped, Alara gazed out the window at her neglected garden. The roses, once vibrant and overflowing, were now choked with weeds. She felt a familiar pang of guilt, another reminder of how her grief had consumed her. She poured herself a cup of the tea and took a tentative sip. It wasn't sweet, but it wasn't bitter either. It tasted alive. A warmth spread through her, not just from the heat of the liquid, but from something deeper, something almost like a hum within her bones. The first few days, the changes were subtle. She found herself waking earlier, without the heavy fog of sadness that had clung to her for months. The exhaustion that had become her constant companion began to lift, replaced by a quiet energy. She still thought of Theron. Of course, the pain still lingered, but it was less sharp, less all-consuming. It was as if the tea was gently untangling the knots in her heart. She started taking walks in the woods again, something she hadn't done since before Theron had left. At first, she stayed close to the familiar paths, her senses still dulled by grief. But as the days passed, and as she continued to drink Willow's tea each morning, she felt an undeniable pull deeper into the trees. The forest, once a place of somber solitude, began to reveal itself to her in new ways. She noticed the intricate patterns of the bark on the trees, the delicate veins in the leaves, the way the sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating dappled mosaics on the forest floor. She heard the rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the songs of birds she'd never noticed before. One afternoon, while exploring a previously unseen trail, she came across a clearing bathed in golden light. A small stream gurgled through the center, its water sparkling over smooth stones. She sat on a moss-covered log, closed her eyes, and simply listened. The sounds of the forest, the wind whispering through the leaves, the chirping of insects, the gentle murmur of the stream, seemed to coalesce into a symphony, a song of life and renewal. A wave of emotion washed over her, so profound it brought tears to her eyes. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was more like recognition, a feeling of being connected to something larger than herself, something ancient and powerful. She spent hours in the clearing, losing herself in the rhythm of the forest. When she finally returned home, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. She felt a lightness in her step, a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. That night, she dreamed of Willow. She was standing in the clearing, surrounded by trees that seemed to glow with an inner light. Willow smiled at her, her eyes twinkling like stars. "The forest has been waiting for you, Ilara," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Embrace its gifts." Ilara woke with a start, the dream vivid in her mind. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep within her soul, that her journey had just begun. The tea was more than just a remedy for her sadness. It was a key, unlocking something within her, reconnecting her to a part of herself she had long forgotten. She rose and went to the window. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the trees. She reached out and touched the glass, feeling an inexplicable sense of kinship with the silent, watchful forest. She whispered, "I'm listening." The unexpected miracle. The first inkling wasn't subtle. It struck at dawn, a gut-wrenching wave that ejected Ilara from bed and sent her scrambling for the privy. The retching offered little respite, just a lingering, coppery tang and a bone-deep weariness. Bad mushrooms, she reasoned, though foraging was a distant memory. The following days repeated the pattern. Each morning brought a fresh onslaught of queasiness, accompanied by dizzy spells and an inexplicable craving for mouth-puckering green apples, usually a fruit she shunned. Her body felt foreign, heavy and lethargic, yet strangely alive. The forest floor, usually a welcoming seat, now felt like granite beneath her. One afternoon, while tending the herb garden near the cottage, Ilara's stomach rebelled once more. She barely reached the wood's edge before being overwhelmed by the familiar sickness. Leaning against the cool, textured bark of an ancient oak, Willow's voice, like the sigh of wind through leaves, drifted into her mind. "Embrace the gifts." Gifts? This felt like a cruel jest of the fates. At last, worry eclipsed her yearning for solitude. She needed answers. Taking a steadying breath, Ilara resolved to visit Agnes, the village healer. Agnes was a woman etched with time like the river stones, her eyes pools of ancient wisdom. The trek to the village seemed interminable. Ilara paused frequently to catch her breath, her hand unconsciously cradling her belly. The setting sun cast elongated shadows, transforming the familiar path into a landscape of burnt orange and deep violet. Agnes greeted her with a kind smile and a steaming mug of chamomile. After patiently hearing Ilara's litany of woes, Agnes' smile dissolved into a look of quiet consideration. "Lie down, child," she instructed, her voice firm yet gentle. Agnes' hands, maps of wrinkles and experience, were surprisingly delicate as she examined Ilara's abdomen. An age passed before Agnes finally spoke. "Ilara," she murmured, her voice unusually subdued, "you carry a life within you." The words hung in the air, dense and weighty. Ilara stared at Agnes, her mind struggling to comprehend. Unthinkable. It had to be unthinkable. Theron had been adamant, decreeing her barren, incapable of conception. He had extinguished her dreams, burying them under the weight of his pronouncements. But how? Alara whispered, her voice trembling. Theron, he said. Agnes reached for Alara's hand, her touch anchoring and reassuring. Theron's words are just that. Words. Sometimes, Alara, the body knows truths that evade science. Miracles occur, particularly in matters of life. Alara's thoughts swirled. A child? Her child? After all the anguish, the despair, the unwavering belief that motherhood was beyond her grasp, new life stirred within her. A lone tear escaped, carving a path down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of grief, however. It was a tear of pure incredulity, of overwhelming joy, of a hope so profound it threatened to shatter the carefully constructed defenses around her heart. "Are you certain, Agnes?" she questioned, her voice shaky. "Could there be some error?" Agnes offered a knowing smile. "I've ushered enough souls into this world to recognize the signs, Alara. There is no mistake. You are pregnant. A miracle, perhaps, yet a child nonetheless." Alara sat in stunned quiet, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. A miracle. The word resonated in her mind, a radiant spark in the darkness. She thought of Willow, of the forest, of the strange surge of vitality that had coursed through her in recent weeks. Could it be? Could the forest, in its timeless wisdom, have answered her most fervent wish? But how would she explain this? What would the villagers whisper? Most importantly, what would Theron say? The thought of him, his cutting words, his dismissive glare, sent a tremor of fear through her. Yet, beneath the fear, a more potent emotion bloomed, fierce maternal instinct. This child, this unexpected blessing, was hers, and she would summon every ounce of her strength to shield it, to nurture it, to shower it with the love and life it deserved, irrespective of the murmurs, the condemnations, or the declarations of the man who had been demonstrably wrong about so much. Whispers turned to wonder. The news, as such things often do in small villages, spread like wildfire. Mrs. Higgins, hanging laundry on her line, overheard Agnes mentioning something about Little Meadowsweet and a miracle. By the time Mrs. Higgins had finished pinning her husband's trousers, the miracle had blossomed into a full-blown spectacle, whispered from garden gate to market stall. "Imagine," she exclaimed to old Mr. Abernathy as he hobbled past, clutching a loaf of bread. Alara Meadowsweet, barren as a stone, carrying a babe. Mr. Abernathy, whose hearing wasn't what it used to be, cupped a hand to his ear. Barrels of what? Mrs. Higgins, never one to repeat herself softly, practically shouted, "A baby, Abernathy! A baby in Alara's belly!" And so it went, embellished and exaggerated with each telling. Some claimed it was a fairy child, left on Alara's doorstep by the whispering woods themselves. Others muttered darkly about potions and pacts with Agnes, the village healer, implying something less than natural. But beneath the gossip, a thread of genuine wonder began to emerge. Alara, the quiet, heartbroken Alara, was pregnant. The news reached Theron as he was mending a fence on the outskirts of his property. A young boy, breathless from running, delivered the bombshell. Theron stopped mid-swing, the hammer clattering to the ground. The blood drained from his face, leaving him pale and unsteady. He stared at the boy, then at the hammer, then back at the boy, his mind struggling to grasp the impossible. "Alara," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Pregnant." The boy, eager to escape the awkwardness of the moment, nodded vigorously and scampered away. Theron sank onto a nearby stump, the world spinning. "Barren." The word echoed in his ears, the doctor's pronouncement, his own certainty, the reason he had left. Regret, sharp and bitter, pierced through him. He had traded kindness and companionship for a chance at fatherhood, only to discover that the very thing he craved was growing within the woman he had abandoned. Confusion warred with a dawning sense of shame. He had been so sure, so utterly convinced of Alara's inability to bear children. Now, The truth, or what seemed to be the truth, stared him in the face. Back at the cottage, Elara, oblivious to the turmoil she had unleashed, was slowly beginning to feel the shift in the village's attitude. The whispers, though still present, were less malicious, more curious. A few brave souls started offering hesitant smiles, a loaf of freshly baked bread left on her doorstep, a basket of apples hanging from the gate. Old Maeve, the village midwife, her face etched with wrinkles and wisdom, paid Elara a visit. She bustled into the cottage, her ample frame radiating warmth and competence. "Well now, Elara Meadowsweet," she said, her voice raspy but kind. "Let's have a look at you, shall we?" Maeve's examination was thorough but gentle. She listened to Elara's heart, palpated her abdomen, and asked a barrage of questions about her health and well-being. When she was finished, she sat back, a knowing glint in her eye. "A fine, healthy babe," she declared. "And you, my dear, are stronger than you think." Maeve's visit was the catalyst. Soon, others followed. Women from the village, some of whom had previously barely acknowledged Elara's existence, arrived bearing gifts and offers of help. Yards of soft wool for knitting baby clothes, dried herbs for soothing teas, and seasoned advice, passed down through generations. The quiet solitude Elara had sought was now filled with the gentle hum of community. The cottage, once a sanctuary of grief, was transforming into a haven of anticipation. The whispering woods seemed to sigh contentedly, its guardian, Willow, feeling the warmth of new life spreading through its roots. The whispers had turned to wonder, and Elara, cradling the life within her, dared to hope that this miracle was just the beginning. 10 tiny heartbeats. Elara's womb swelled, a burgeoning secret expanding beyond explanation. It grew at an alarming rate, straining the seams of her gowns until Maeve, with clever hands and a knowing glimmer in her eyes, set about creating new ones, flowing garments of linen and wool that swirled around her like nascent storm clouds. The villagers murmured, not with malice now, but with genuine awe. Her condition transcended mere pregnancy. It was evolving into a marvel of the natural world, a budding legend whispered from hearth to hearth. She carried the weight, a perpetual, anchoring force that tethered her to the earth. A flurry of movement stirred within, not the delicate flutters of expectation, but a vibrant roil, a miniature orchestra of kicks and stretches that left her gasping. Some days, the intensity bordered on unbearable. Her back ached relentlessly, her breathing shallow and strained. Yet, fear took a back seat to fascination, wonder, and a dawning, profound affection. She constantly caressed her abdomen, tracing the hidden forms within, humming fragments of lullabies from her distant childhood. Maeve, her brow creased with concern, insisted Elara consult old Peg, the village wise woman. Peg resided on the outskirts of the whispering woods, her cottage a haven of herbs and drying blossoms, the air saturated with the fragrance of chamomile and smoldering wood. Elara, leaning heavily on Maeve's support, undertook the taxing trek. Peg, a woman whose age was etched on her face in a tapestry of deep wrinkles like the growth rings of an ancient tree, greeted them with a sagacious nod. Her eyes, clouded with age, nonetheless held a spark of ageless insight. "Enter, child," she croaked, her voice like the rustling of autumn leaves. "Let's discover what wonders you cradle." Elara reclined on a woven mat, the redolent scent of lavender and thyme enveloping her. Peg's hands, gnarled yet surprisingly gentle, carefully examined Elara's distended abdomen. She probed and pressed, her silence stretching into an eternity. At long last, she retrieved her stethoscope, a tarnished silver relic that seemed more ancient than Elara herself. The quiet was punctuated only by the cottage's rhythmic creaks and the faint susurrus of the wind weaving through the trees. Peg listened intently, meticulously moving the stethoscope across Elara's swollen form, her expression an inscrutable mask. Then, she sat back, her eyes widening in disbelief. She glanced at Maeve, then back at Elara, her voice barely audible. How can this be? Maeve, ever pragmatic, inquired. What is it, Peg? Is something amiss? Peg shook her head slowly. Amiss? Nay, extraordinary, utterly unparalleled. She leaned in again, pressing the stethoscope against Alara's skin. This time, Alara discerned it too. A faint, rapid drumming, a chorus of miniature heartbeats. 1. Peg enumerated, her finger tracing a path across Alara's abdomen. 2, 3, 4. She paused, her brow furrowing in concentration. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. She gasped, inhaling sharply. 10. 10 tiny heartbeats. The very air within the cottage seemed to vibrate with the sheer impossibility of it all. Maeve inhaled sharply, her hand flying to cover her mouth. Alara stared at Peg, her mind reeling, struggling to grasp the magnitude of what she was hearing. 10? 10 infants? It defied all understanding. 10. Alara finally stammered, her voice a trembling whisper. But how? Peg shook her head again, a slow, bewildered gesture. I have witnessed nothing akin to this. Not in all my years. It's miraculous, child. A genuine miracle. Word of the 10 tiny heartbeats surged through the village like a tidal wave. The whispers blossomed into gasps of astonishment, then into a jubilant, collective celebration. It had become more than a simple pregnancy. It was now an extraordinary occasion, a symbol, a testament to nature's boundless power. The entire village coalesced around Alara, their initial curiosity giving way to a fierce protectiveness. The women presented gifts, hand-knitted blankets in a vibrant array of hues, diminutive woolen caps and boots, and intricately carved wooden toys. The men contributed their skills, reinforcing the cottage roof, constructing a capacious cradle large enough to accommodate a small army of newborns, and ensuring a constant supply of firewood. Alara, overwhelmed by the outpouring of affection and support, wept tears of profound gratitude. The solitude that had long shadowed her had dissipated, supplanted by a sense of belonging, of being cherished and esteemed. No longer was she merely Alara Metasweet, the woman who couldn't conceive. She was now Alara Metasweet, the mother of 10, a breathing embodiment of the magic that flourished within the Whispering Woods. She was terrified, certainly, yet also imbued with a deep-seated sense of purpose. Her existence, once shattered, now overflowed with a potential so immense it robbed her of breath. A mother's strength. The first contraction slammed into Alara, an invisible fist knocking the wind from her lungs and dropping her to her knees. It struck mid-morning, sunlight gilding the meadow where she assisted Willow with her herb garden. The air, normally rich with lavender and chamomile, now held only the sharp, coppery taste of dread. Willow, she croaked, gripping the raised bed for support. Willow's placid features sharpened with concern. Alara? What's wrong? The little ones, Alara gasped, another surge of agony racking her frame. I believe they're arriving. With brisk efficiency, Willow guided Alara toward her cottage, a snug haven currently brimming with diminutive clothes and handcrafted bassinets. News traveled through the village with the speed of a startled bird. Within an hour, Alara's humble abode pulsed with feminine energy. Midwives, seasoned mothers, venerable grandmothers, all volunteering their wisdom and comfort. Even a few men hovered outside, their expressions a blend of reverence and anxiety, maintaining a silent vigil. Peg, her face a tapestry of wrinkles etched by time and experience, assumed command. Her examination was thorough yet gentle, her eyes widening incrementally. 10, she breathed, shaking her head in disbelief. 10 tiny miracles inbound. The ensuing labor defied all precedent. Contractions hammered at Alara relentlessly, each wave more ferocious than the last. Summoning reserves of inner fortitude she hadn't known she possessed, she navigated the pain, her breath rasping in shallow bursts. Willow remained steadfast, her cool hand a grounding presence, her soothing voice a guiding star in the tempest. You are powerful, Alara, Willow murmured, dabbing her brow. A force of nature. Let the spirit of the woods infuse you. Then, the first cry erupted, a fragile, piercing sound that sliced through the tension, bringing tears to Alera's eyes. A son, they announced, his face flushed and puckered, his tiny fists clenched tight. And then another, and another, and another. The room transformed into a chorus of newborn wails, a symphony celebrating the astonishing spectacle unfolding before them. 5 boys, each a miniature marvel, each a beacon of hope. But the ordeal wasn't complete. The women toiled diligently, their faces aglow with the light of candles and the sheer wonder of the event. Alera, drained yet unyielding, continued to bear down, guided by primal instinct. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, the last infant emerged. Another cry, fainter this time, but no less precious. A daughter. 5 sons and 5 daughters. 10 flawless children, a testament to Alera's indomitable spirit and the potent magic woven into the fabric of the Whispering Woods. Exuberance swept through the village. The men, who had been pacing anxiously outdoors, erupted in cheers, their voices reverberating through the valley. Pyres were ignited, casting flickering shadows across the joyous faces of the crowd. Provisions were shared, ballads were sung, and legends were recounted. Tales of Alera, the woman once deemed infertile, the woman who had defied expectation, the woman who had delivered a miracle. Within the cottage, Alera rested in Willow's embrace, her 10 offspring nestled around her like priceless gems. She studied their slumbering features, her heart brimming with a love so profound it brought a fresh wave of tears. No longer the ostracized one, the forsaken wife. She was Alera Metasweet, mother of 10, a woman touched by destiny and eternally linked to the enchantment of the Whispering Woods. An unseen energy thrummed in the air, a tangible sense of awe and gratitude. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, recognizing the magnitude of the moment. The fragrance of wildflowers wafted through the open window, mingling with the comforting scent of newborn life. As the revelry continued outside, Alera closed her eyes, a gentle smile gracing her lips. She was weary, profoundly so, yet she had never felt more vital. She had stared into the abyss and emerged emboldened, more resilient, more determined than ever before. She was a mother, and she would devote herself to safeguarding and cherishing these 10 irreplaceable lives. The world may have doubted her, rejected her, but she had discovered her power, her purpose, in the most unexpected of places. She was home, at last. A new beginning. The murmur of the stream outside Alera's dwelling was a constant, unwelcome reminder of his folly. Theron, his posture defeated, stood at the border of the wildly flourishing garden, the vibrant blooms a sharp contrast to the bleakness he'd once projected onto the woman within. He couldn't bring himself to knock, paralyzed by the enormity of his past actions. Word had spread, carried on excited breaths, tales of a miracle, an unprecedented event. 10 infants. Alera, whom he had cruelly dismissed, was now mother to 10. He caught sight of her in the doorway, sunlight illuminating the threads of gold woven through her dark hair. She possessed a newfound fortitude, a serene self-assurance emanating from her very being. In her arms, nestled securely, was one of the newborns, a wisp of a girl crowned with a shock of black hair. He edged forward. "Alera," he rasped, emotion constricting his throat. Words fail me." She didn't recoil. Her gaze met his, impassive. "Then perhaps silence would be wiser," she replied, her tone firm. He recoiled internally. "I was wrong," he finally choked out, the admission bitter on his tongue. "Profoundly wrong. I succumbed to rumor, to speculation. I let it fester within me. Please, Alera, find it in your heart to forgive." He crumpled to his knees in the damp earth, uncaring of the mud staining his clothes. "Allow me to help, to prove that I can be of some worth, of something greater." Alera remained silent, her expression unreadable. The infant in her arms stirred, emitting a soft cry. Her response was immediate, instinctive, a gentle rocking motion. Days bled into weeks. Theron's presence in the village a muted echo of his former self. He lent his hands to any task, splitting logs, cultivating the shared garden, eager to demonstrate his contrition. He often glimpsed Ilara, navigating the demands of her extraordinary family, always surrounded by a chorus of well-wishers. But she offered him nothing beyond the barest civilities. One evening, Ilara encountered Willow Moonwhisper seated upon a mossy log bordering the whispering woods, her silver tresses shimmering in the fading light. The very air vibrated with the ancient power of the trees. "He seeks redemption," Willow observed, her voice like the whisper of leaves. "But the road to atonement is rarely smooth. I don't know if I'm capable of it," Ilara confessed, her voice laced with anguish. The pain's still so vivid. His face evokes every humiliation, every moment of isolation. Willow placed a comforting hand on Ilara's arm, her grip surprisingly firm. "The past cannot be undone, Ilara, but need not shackle you. You have been gifted a profound blessing, a weighty duty. Focus on the present, on the future you are building for yourself and those 10 precious lives." "But can I ever truly trust him?" Ilara whispered, her voice raw. Willow offered a knowing smile. "Trust is not freely offered, Ilara. It must be earned through action. Observe his conduct. Listen to the wisdom of your heart." Ilara inhaled deeply, the scent of pine and damp soil grounding her. "Thank you, Willow." The sun hadn't fully crested the horizon when Ilara discovered Theron amidst the vegetable patch, diligently removing weeds. He looked up as she approached, his features a blend of hope and trepidation. "Theron," she stated, her voice clear and unwavering, "I have considered your plea." He held his breath, his gaze locked on hers. "You may offer assistance," she continued. "These children, they require boundless affection and support. You can aid with the daily tasks, nurture the garden, shoulder the endless burdens that come with caring for so many. However," she paused, her eyes holding his, "you will be a helper, nothing more. The possibility of marriage is forever closed. You relinquish that privilege." A fleeting shadow of anguish crossed Theron's face, but he quickly regained his composure. "I understand," he responded, his voice subdued. "I accept your terms." Thus, Theron became a fixture in their lives, a quiet, industrious presence. He changed diapers, lulled infants to slumber, and supported Ilara amidst the relentless demands of her maternal responsibilities. He never voiced complaint, never expected recompense. One afternoon found Ilara reclining on a blanket in the verdant meadow, surrounded by her 10 miracles. Villagers bustled about, offering support, sharing laughter, expressing unending admiration. Theron remained at a distance, carefully repairing a tear in a baby's blanket, his gaze fixed on the children with a mix of wonder and regret. Ilara observed him, a sense of tranquility settling over her. She had extended forgiveness, not for his benefit, but for her own liberation. To harbor resentment would only poison her spirit, a risk she couldn't afford with 10 innocent souls relying on her. She regarded her children, each distinct, each a testament to life's enduring power. She surveyed her community, their faces radiating warmth and care. She glanced at Theron, his head bowed in humbled service, and she understood, with profound thankfulness, that she was indeed blessed. She had endured a profound loss, but she had been granted tenfold in return, alongside a resilience she never knew she possessed and a community that embraced her without reservation. Her tale was not one of desolation and abandonment, but rather a narrative of perseverance, renewal, and the transformative might of love. It was, she realized, a fresh start,